So, going back a little bit, how I got here. So I am a former accountant. Picked that because it was safe. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I graduated college with 170 or 180 semester hours. So that's a degree and a half if you're not tracking. And ended up joining the military because I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And when I got out of the military, got my MBA in computer information systems, ended up just walking out of a job as an accountant, and luckily got a job in help desk and kind of learned about ethical hacking, thought it sounded sexy, and kind of pursued that. So pretty much studied day and night. I got my A+, Net+, Security+, everything you were supposed to do, worked my way through certifications, and landed a job as a senior network engineer in a national lab, and then ended up being a pen tester after that. So from help desk day one to pen tester was approximately 2 years. And this is just one of those fields, if you're looking to get into it, that if you want to be a pen tester, you just kind of got to put in the work, you got to study. And that's really what makes the difference between somebody who wants to be in the field and somebody who's going to make it into the field, is the people that are willing to put in the effort. And those people that, this is a field that changes what seems like every day. There's something new out every day. So if you're willing to put in the effort, study, keep up with the times, this is the field for you. So that's kind of how I went from accountant into a pen tester. So on to this talk. So we're going to be talking about internal networks, and I have it on the next screen, but internal is basically maybe assume compromise. You just assume that either I dropped a box in your network or I phished you and got in. It doesn't matter. We're in your network. So it's not coming from the outside. We're already inside. And it's going to be mostly talking about Active Directory attacks. Since Fortune 500, I think 95% or greater uses Active Directory. So this whole talk's going to focus around Active Directory attacks. So why this talk? Well, there's offense, defense, and awareness. So if you're a baby pen tester, this might be good for you. If you're looking to get in the field, this might be good for you. If you're a senior pen tester, it's probably redundant information. But if you can learn how to leverage these attacks, and then you can learn how to defend against these attacks, we'll talk about offense and defense on this side. And just for general awareness. So if you're a C-level or anybody else, just like, hey, I know about these attacks, here's what the common ones are, and here's how we can defend against them. So some notes before we get started. Again, internal is inside network. This talk is based on my experience as a pen tester. Your experience and your mileage may vary, so you may have a different top 5 than I do. You might have different recommendations for defenses than I do. And then this talk is going to have live demonstrations. I'm on my phone Wi-Fi, so we'll see how that goes. But please hold questions until the end if you can. Come see me afterwards. I do have stickers or business cards if you want a pen test. But other than that, we're going to get started. So item number one is LLM&R poisoning. So what is LLM&R? It stands for Link Local Multicast Name Resolution. We use this to identify host when DNS fails. Previously, it was used by what was called MBTNS. So if the chain would be LLM&R, then MBTNS. If LLM&R fails, then you go down to MBTNS. And the key flaw of this is that it uses a user's username and their NTLM-v2 hash when they're appropriately responded to. So we're going to use a tool called Responder to respond to these requests, do a man-in-the-middle attack. And we'll talk about this attack a little bit more in depth. So let's assume here that we have a victim and a server. The victim's going to say, hey, can you connect me to this file share? And for whatever reason, they type the file share in wrong, or there's a old share out there, it's just not resolving. And the server has no idea what's going on, DNS isn't working. So then the victim's going to send out a broadcast message. And it's going to say, hey, does anybody know how to connect to this? And we'll say, I do. Go ahead, just send your hash my way, and I'll get you connected. And then they'll send over the hash, and we'll just intercept it. So this is what I do before I even run any Nmap scans, any Nessus scans, anything. I'm firing this up first thing in the morning usually, or lunchtime when people are generating a lot of traffic. This is the best time for it. But when you can generate some traffic as well with your Nmap scans, that's why I kind of run this prior to. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at a live demonstration and cross our fingers that it actually works. And I can't see any of that. So I got my little cheat sheet, so I don't have to sit here and type this out. Let's type it out. All right, so we're loading up Responder. And all we're doing here is we're doing the man in the middle. We're just saying Responder, hey, listen on this tunnel that I'm connected to, which is just a VPN into my network here. So in case you're wondering, you can see the poisoners here at LMNR, MBTNS, DNS. We've got some servers running. We're just listening for any sort of events. And to nudge this along, I'm gonna go ahead and just push an event. So we're gonna come down here. And I'm just going to point a file share it myself. Okay, and go back, and nothing's happening. That's okay. So that's how the live demo works, right? Let's see if we trigger it one more time and see if we can get it to work. If not, that's all right.
Give it a path.
What's that?
Give it a path.
Is there something in there? That's fine. Try one more time. All right, so it's not going to work, and that's fine. That's why we have backup slides. So, all right, so we run Responder. We submit this, as you saw, and what would come through is a hash that looks like this. So on the hash, you can see that we are getting a hash from 10.0.3.7. And the person we're taking the hash from is Marvel/FCastle. This is Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. So we grab his NTLMV2 hash. Now there's a couple options we can do from here. Step one of what we're gonna do is this part, and then step two you'll see later as an alternative option. So we're gonna take this hash and we're going to run it offline. The hashcat down there is Modulo 5600 for this type of attack. I just put this to Rocky because I knew the password was weak, but you run this against a word list, custom word list, however it works, try to crack the password, and then see what happens. In this event, this is very, very common, by the way. It's probably one of the most common, is that we just crack these easy or these weak passwords. So here is the mitigation strategy. Now, the top part's just kind of like the, here's how you turn it off. The best idea is to shut off LMNR and MBTNS. So, because one is a failover to the other, you have to turn off both. But if you can't do that, or you refuse to do that for whatever reason, the other option, network access control, make it a little bit more difficult. Somebody goes and plugs into your network, they don't just leave a Dropbox and get right on the network. The other option as well is to require strong passwords. Still to this day, I have a pen test coming up in a couple weeks, and they're using 6-character passwords at a major university. So, honestly, 14 characters is good. Even the longer, the better. You're gonna hear me harp on this a lot. Password policy is probably one of the biggest things. But if you can use non-common words, like my password 123 is a long password, but it's still, it's still got common words and will get cracked. I think the longest we've cracked is 19 characters, and that's because it was a Bible verse. So, you're not being smart, unfortunately. So the longer, if you can do a full sentence, 40 characters or whatever in a full sentence, that's fine. But the longer the better, because we're not gonna be able to crack them. All right, so moving on. The second most common is pass the password / pass the hash. And what are this? Well, if we crack a password like we just did, we can attempt to pass it around. Or if we can get onto a machine with something that we captured, then we can try to dump the SAM on a Windows machine and use those hashes for lateral movement. I'm not going to attempt any live demo here. So we can use a tool called CrackNap CrackNap exec is really good. Here, all I'm doing is, you saw that I was in the .3 network. I'm just sweeping that whole network with that user that we found in the domain and the password. And you can see it's spraying across, and there's a DC that it found the Punisher machine, it found Spider-Man's machine. Well, if you look through with the pwned on the right-hand side here, we own the Punisher, which we expected, and we own Spider-Man. So it means we are also an administrator on the Spider-Man machine. And now we can go over there and try to get a shell on that machine using the credentials that we just found. So with that, we could run something like PSExact, say we get the shell, and then we're a system on the machine, we just run hash dump, and you can see by the 500 ID that that's the administrator, and we just grab the second part of that hash there, and this turns into pass the hash. So you can use CrackNap exec, same thing, use the user of fcastle who just happened to be the admin on the machine, and then the hash of that -- local, you pass it around. Here we didn't get anything extra out of it, but I have had pen tests where I passed the administrator password and got every single computer in the network because they were reusing that password. So if you're imaging the same password over and over and over, this is where we get you. And then you'll see some other attacks like token impersonation and things we're going to talk about, where all we have to do is start moving laterally to these machines. Maybe this machine doesn't find anything, but maybe the next machine might have, you know, IT information or a user on it that we can leverage or anything. It's all about moving laterally until we can move vertically. So this is kind of what pass the hash looks like. We'll talk mitigation. So limit your account reuse. Don't reuse your local administrator passwords. If you can, disable your guest and administrator accounts, and limit who is the local administrator. So too many places let everybody be an admin on their computers and let people be admin on multiple computers, and this is kind of where we take advantage of this. Same thing, harping again, is the strong passwords. So if we can't get onto your machine, we can't crack a password, then you know it's going to be a lot more difficult life for us as a pen tester. And then lastly, PAM is out now, privilege access management, so tools like Thycotic or CyberArk, where you have a check-in, check-out function of an account. So that what that does is you check in the account, or you check out the account, it rotates the password, gives it to you for 8 hours, and then it automatically checks back in, rotates the account again. So you only have a password for a temporary amount of time, and they're storing them at 15 to 30 characters in length, depending on the sensitivity and everything else. So that's where a lot of the Fortune 500 are moving to this PAM type of solution. All right, so third is token impersonation. So tokens are temporary keys. You can think of them as cookies for computers. They allow you to have access without having to provide credentials each time you access a file. And there's going to be two types of tokens. There's a delegate token and there's an impersonate token. So delegate's like you remote desktop into a computer, and impersonate's non-interactive, so it's like attaching a network drive. And let's see why it's bad. So we've got a user here. We've got, say we've got this shell, and we list the tokens. And right now you can see the get UID at the top, we're authority system. And I say list tokens with this tool called Incognito, which is built in, or you could load it from Interpreter. You see here, Marvel fcastle. We'll go ahead and just do a quick who am I. We'll impersonate the user up top, and then go into a shell, and you can see that we've impersonated this user, and we are now fcastle. And if we try to run a MeetMe cats, try to dump hashes with MeetMe cats, you can see that we're getting access denied there, but that's because we're not a domain administrator. If we repeat the process and we impersonate a domain administrator, scroll through really fast, you'll see that we dump the hashes. So this happens when, say, somebody is a domain administrator and they're remoting into computers to fix problems or just to remote in, or you don't have that account segregation. And I've got the Kerberos ticket granting ticket account highlighted because we use that to generate what's called a golden ticket. If we generate that golden ticket, we're getting on your domain controller, it's game over. So if we can dump this, this is pretty much over. So again, we'll talk mitigation here, but you should really limit your user and group token creation permissions, and really what it comes down to is account tiering. Your domain administrators should only be using their domain accounts to access the domain controller and things that are important. they should not be using it for anything and everything. So you should ideally have two separate accounts. One's like their everyday use, and the other one is your domain administrator account. Same thing with the local admin restriction. We need administrator on the computer to actually be able to do token impersonation. You saw we were authority system, so it still boils down to limiting those local admin rights to prevent this in the first place. All right, so playing off of number 1, which was LLM&R poisoning, we have something called SMB Relay. So an SMB Relay attack uses responder and captures the hashes, but instead of capturing them and trying to crack them offline, we can just pass them across the network to a different machine and try to leverage a shell that way. So there are some requirements. SMB signing must be disabled, and that is disabled by default on all Windows machines except servers. So you're not going to get on a domain controller with this unless for some reason they've disabled it, but you can move laterally pretty easily. So if SMB signing is disabled and you can push this across, it's pretty straightforward. So the relay credentials must be an admin on the machine if you're going to dump hashes or do anything of use. So we can take a look. First thing here, we just make a small change to responder. So you edit the configuration to not intercept the SMB or HTTP, because we're actually just going to relay these. And that's kind of what it looks like now. And then we boot up. This one here is Python for NTLM Relay X as part of Impacket. So Responder is part of Impacket. This is part of Impacket. It's a really good toolkit for internal pen testing. So we're just booting this up, and this relay is just going to be listening for the hash to come through, and then you specify the target in your targets.txt which you want to attack. In this instance, we're going to attack Spider-Man because you saw earlier that we already had access to Spider-Man, so this is going to function, but we're just going to trigger that and then trigger an event. And then here's what happens. Now, you see that at the top it says we're going to try to connect to .6 as Marvel F Castle. It succeeded. And you look at the bottom, it starts dumping the local SAM hashes for the machine. Now, this is just a proof of concept. You could take this a lot further, get a shell with Meterpreter, Empire, whatever, etc., and go farther than this. But just because that SMB signing is disabled, and we don't ever have to know the password of the account that we're intercepting. So that's what's key takeaway here, is because of that, we just leverage, and you could have 20, 30, 40 character passwords, and we're still doing this. So let's talk mitigation. First of all, enable SMB signing on all devices. The pro here is it completely stops the attack. The con is it can cause performance issues when you're copying files. So what I've read and heard is 15% increase in time. I've also heard longer than that as well. So depending, you might get some people complaining or admins pushing back on this, and that's what one of the reasons there. So the other option is to disable NTLM authentication. Completely stops the attack, but if Kerberos stops working, either you have issues or you have to revert back to NTLM and you're back in the same spot you were. The other options here are account tiering, which I've been harping on, and local admin restriction, which I've been harping on. So honestly, it comes down to SMB signing and just enabling that across the network. That's the main recommendation, but if people fight back, you kind of have these other options, and these are just best practice as it goes anyway. All right, let's talk about the last one real quick. So this is Kerberos State, and if you don't know what Kerberos is, it's a authentication method used by Windows, and they use tickets. So if you see here 1 to 2, basically we have a domain controller or a server, and we're going to call it a KDC, which is a key distribution center. The key distribution center we're going to request a ticket from. So we're going to request this TGT, it's ticket granting ticket. And the server is going to say, okay, we'll grant you a ticket, you've authenticated. Now, say we have a application server down here. It could be SQL, it could be whatever you want it to be. From here, what we can do is to the KDC, we could say, hey, I want this service ticket, which is called the TGS. I want the service ticket. The server says, okay, I'll give you the service ticket, and while we're at it, we're going to encrypt the server's account hash. So their NTLM hash, or however it works, it's a Kerberos ticket hash, actually. So the Kerberos ticket hash comes through, and you take that, and you're supposed to present it to the application server. And that's where it decrypts the hash, and it says, okay, do you have permissions, do you not have permissions to actually use the service? And then it allows you in. Well, we don't have to do 5 and 6, we can just stop at 4 and take the hash and try to crack it. So we can use something out of Packet as well called get user SPN. So SPN service principal name that's used by services. So we'll look for the SPNs using our credential that we found. So all we have to have here for this to work, and I think it said it up there, is, no, it didn't say it. All you have to have is a valid ticket. So once you have a ticket, meaning you have a valid login with the user here, we point to the DC for our request. We make the request, and you can see we get this Hydra DC, we get a service, SQL service, and if you look over in the member of, it's a member of domain admins. So you see service accounts all the time with improper permissions, domain admin for whatever reason, and here we get this big long hash, this Kerberos hash. And if we were to take it and try to, crack it, you can see that with hashcat of 13100 as the module, my password 123# technically meets the 14-character requirement, but still is found with just RockU. So we could leverage this account now as a domain admin, and that would be game over, or for lateral movement if they had appropriate permissions. So mitigation strategies. Strong passwords, least privilege. I'm a broken record up here, but this is really comes down to strong passwords, least privilege, limiting users what they can and can't do in the network. And again, this is top 5. This is the basics. These have been around for a while. If you're a senior pen tester, which I see some of you in here, it's not new news. It's old news, but it's still coming up. And it's still coming up because these are just, a lot of this is just common defaults in a network, right? It's how Windows comes by standard, and nobody changes it. They just install it and they let it run. You let your users have 6-character, 8-character passwords, we're gonna have a field day. So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. So, I've said the same 4 or 5 things across the board. You eliminate those 4 or 5 things, you make it a lot more difficult on us as a pen tester. Any questions? Perfect, thank you. Oh, I've got a YouTube video of it out already if you want to watch it. If not, I can give slides too. So, yeah. Anybody else? Perfect, thank you guys.